Hi, my name is Caroline Bukaik. I'm the CEO and founder of The Voice of Our Child, which is an organization that offers life skills and mentorship to kids through international travel, community, and humanitarian involvement. That changes kids' life. The fact that they can see people who speak a different language, see people who don't have as much as they have, see people who really appreciate what these kids can do for them. That changes a kid's life. That creates a legacy, and that's what we do at the Voice of Our Child. And through Water Gap Africa Safaris, we provide kids in Kenya with school supplies and clean water. I know about not growing up with clean water and school supplies. I moved to the United States 25 years ago in search of great opportunities like most immigrants. And I just decided to say something because I really sympathize with what's going on with the Black Lives Matter, and I also sympathize with the families that have their loved ones like murdered in broad daylight. And that we saw the other day with George Floyd. Now, as a black person living in the United States for 25 years, I have been pulled over quite a number of times by the police, and they have been nothing but polite to me. I cannot just join people by saying that they're brutal, because they've never been brutal to me. They've never been brutal to over 100 members of my family who are living here. They have never been brutal to my son, my husband, my father, my uncles. They have never been brutal to us. In fact, when I moved into this country, I moved here with my 19-year-old brother. And being a young guy, I think he got excited about the United States. The first welcome to America was in, my oldest brother lived here, and he lived in Patterson. So we got off at Newark on a hot July evening on British Airways, went to his apartment. It was already getting dark at night, and the following day I was waking up to loud music and noise and everything, and I looked downstairs and I was like, what is going on? And my brother said, it's summertime here in the United States. I said, yeah, but the noise, like, what's going on down there? And I looked out of the window and I saw what we in Kenya call the Black Americans. I was like, wow, so this is why they leave. You know, we were excited because we had heard about the Black Americans. Like, we watched like movies and the Jeffersons and the Jacksons, and that's what we knew about the black people. We had also heard about the history of slavery, but we had also been slaves in our own country under the British rule. We gained our independence in 1963. My two grandfathers were prisoners of war. They were taken prisoner. The British people say that they were bringing us religion and Christianity, but yes, we were made slaves in our own country. But again, when we went back to school and we were reading about it, slavery actually started in Africa. It was like having a maid. We didn't know the brutality of what was going on in the US. Yes, we read about it in school, but we didn't know how bad it was. But I remember growing up in Kenya and the British rule. We were grateful that we had been colonized then, because then they brought education to us and we could go to school. However, when we gained our independence from the British people, they did not offer us anything. The government did not give us free housing. The government did not give us food stamps or anything like that. We had to start again from square zero. My great-grandfathers and my grandfathers had to start again from square zero. With their farms taken, they had to start again. And I think the starting again made us have more appreciation for what we owned later. And it also gave the British an indication that, wow, I guess these people can be educated and, you know, they can take over. You know, we had the first black president, Jomo Kenyatta, you know, and then like right after that, you know, he ruled for so many years. I think it was 28 years or something like that. And we've ruled ourselves. We are actually one of the most developed African countries in Africa. But we had to start from square one. And we live among the British who live there in equal harmony. We never ever feel that they discriminate us, or I don't think they feel discriminated. Well, most of them moved back to England when they realized that we had gotten back our independence and were able to go to schools and do the things that we needed to do. So when we were growing up, of course, it's a poor country, it was poor then, and it's still some very poor places there. There was need for clean water. These kids who can't even go to school, because they don't have school supplies. There's poor families there. But people work hard and are so, so happy. Even if we didn't have anything, we were so happy. So when I came here, and my first job was at Kodak, and I worked with a lot of black people who, I guess from Patterson, worked there. I only saw like really angry people, and I was like so excited to be in the US. I was like so excited to be having like a really great first job. But I remember they used to tease me and say, "You're being so white." And I'd be like, "What do you mean by that?" And they tell me like you never miss a day of work, you punch in on time, you work Thanksgiving and Christmas. I said, well, because first of all, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here and to make money. Second, it's like we didn't even know what Thanksgiving was. We didn't have much family here, so we worked. But then it was like they started introducing the direct deposit, and I remember I was so excited. I was like, hey, the money is gonna go to my account, I can get it there. I was like, yes. And after I signed up for it, these friends of mine now who are from Patterson were like, you don't do that. You don't do direct deposit. These white people need to give you your money. I realized there was a lot of anger and hatred to the white person. So, during my breaks, I would sit with them and go like, what's the deal? And they would tell me, yes, you don't understand about slaves and what happened and this. And I would tell them, like, guys, we were slaves in our own country. I said, you can't believe how many nights when I was younger that I wished that my grandfathers had been brought here as slaves instead of being slaves in my own country, so that I could have been born here in the United States and have the equal opportunities that you have. And I started asking them, I said, so what's the deal? Like you guys can work, yes, you go to the same restaurant, yes, and they were like, yeah, but there's still a lot of racial discrimination and everything. I never really experienced that racial discrimination that they were talking about. I guess I didn't understand it. Maybe I was just grateful to be here. My 19-year-old brother who had come with, on the other hand, was a whole different story. Robert got into bad company, and he just got into such bad company that I used to go look for him in some of these I didn't know they were called projects then. I knew they were just really tall high-rise buildings, and then I learned that they were projects. And so my brother would tell me, he says, oh, Caroline, we don't need to work so hard. Like my friends, they live in these apartments and they don't have to pay for the house, and they get like free food from the government. And I was listening because I was like, really? Like we don't have to go to work? He says, yeah. I was like, that's kind of interesting. I said, like, but what's the deal? Like, what's the deal? There has to be a deal. He says, no, there's no deal. So Robert got in really bad company, and I tried so hard to pull him out of that. And he just got so sucked into it until he lost his job. He started missing work. He would started, really getting into substance. It was like really a bad situation. And I remember every time when I'd go looking for him in these places, because we didn't have cell phones then, so if he didn't show up home, I went looking for him. These people were like, hey, what's up? Like what's wrong? Do your brother hang out? I was scared. To be honest, I was terrified. I was really scared. These were not like the black people that I was used to. These were not the kind of black people that I was used to being back home. And even though I had those few black people who I used to work with, I was like, so can you explain to me, like, what are projects? And they told me, oh, those are people who stay in those houses the government gives you. There's two parties in the United States. There's Republican, there's Democrat. You should vote for Democrat because they care for the people. They care for your welfare. They give you insurance. They do all these things. So we were just like blindly like going on with things, right? But one thing I didn't want to do, I didn't want to be given something by somebody. I wanted to work for my money, I guess because that's what we were used to. And so my brother lost his job, and then finally all his friends like really got him into a lot of trouble, and he was arrested and everything. But the strange thing was, every time my brother would call me to go bail him out from the police station or whatever, the police would always tell me, your brother looks like he's a really nice guy. he's different. Like, where you guys from? And I tell them, we're from Kenya and all this. And he's like, I tell him he's gonna get him out of this mess. He's gonna go work hard and everything. And I kept doing that for years and years and years. And I could get my brother out of there. As soon as I started making my paycheck, I moved out of Patterson. We had moved from one side of Patterson, and now we were living by Kennedy High School, which now I understand is like one of the really crazy areas. And I remember like my window just really faced the high school, the Kennedy High School. And when the kids would come from school, because I used to work at night at Kodak and sleep during the day, when I couldn't sleep, like, because by lunch it's like by evening these kids are getting out, and there was always police, so many police cars outside our apartment telling these kids, go home, go home, go home. There was fights and everything. I saw kids like pulling out guns on each other. It was like really crazy. I was so scared. I had my one daughter then. I was just so terrified. I couldn't sleep. I was just thinking, these people are just gonna start shooting and the bullet is gonna come out of the window. I was just so terrified. So as soon as I got my kind of first paycheck, second paycheck, I moved out and I went to Passaic. And it was kind of quieter. It was like more different people there. It was more Hispanic and everything. And I just felt kind of safer there. But I was kind of sad because I was like, wow, this Black Americans like are people who we really envied. Like, what's going on? Like, what's this whole deal? And so I started asking a lot of questions. And I remember, because my brother now was telling me about the people at the project who get government money. I was struggling, like I was so struggling. Like I'd go to the supermarket and I'd only be able to buy like milk and bread and some vegetables. But I had bought my own car. I had my own apartment. So I was kind of happy that I was able to do that. But every time I went to the supermarket, I saw these people like putting tons and tons and groceries in their shopping cart, and they'd pay with this special card. I always like wondered, like, what's all that about? And somebody would point out to me, oh, they're on government assistance. So it's like, wow, it would be kind of nice to like be able to buy all those things and put them in my shopping cart, And then I remember there was this one girl who used to come and braid my hair. And she told me, she says, why are you working? By that time I had my second child. She said, why are you working? She says, see, I have my 2 kids. I get this amount of money for this kid, and I get this another amount of money for this kid. We don't have to pay for a house, and you're here, you're struggling. You don't even have juice to give us when you come to your house. But it was so weird because no matter how tempting it sounded, I said, you know what? And again, I was just so innocent just talking to her. I said, I know that, yes, you guys came out from slavery, but isn't that slavery when the white person is now controlling you? So he moved from making you a slave where he wasn't paying you and he works in the fields to where now you're not working, but you're staying in the house and he feeds you. I said, don't you think maybe he doesn't want you to get out of there and get an education and go look for jobs and compete with them? And she'd look at me, she's like, I don't really think so. Like, why would I, care and things like that. But again, I didn't understand. I was so new to this country and I just didn't even understand these things. But I can tell you there were so many times when it was so tempting, especially when I lost my job because I had chemical reactions at Kodak. I became Employee of the Month at Kodak because I couldn't quit and I worked really hard. I was there was an opening to be a lab analyst. My hot flashes are really getting to me. There was an opening to be a lab analyst and I applied for the job and I got it. I was the first female and the first even Black person to work as a lab analyst. And I'm only using the word Black because I'm talking about this right now. Otherwise, to me, I never ever see myself as anything but an American and a Christian and a wife and a mother and just a woman who is so grateful to be in this country. So coming back to my brother, I tried to get him back on track and I was like, please, let me tell you, if you get into getting welfare, I said, you become a slave to the government. You will never know what it feels like to own your own home or to buy your own car or to get your paycheck and buy what you want and live wherever you want, I said, that pride of you working hard and getting your money. And after so many times of going back and forth and getting him from jail and everything and all that, he really reformed, and now he works so hard. And he tells me, Carol, I'm so glad that you made me not get into that. He said, I see all my friends and what they got into, and most of them are not even there. A lot of them, like, just with drugs and shooting each other and things like that. And it just really became a very scary time for us. But this whole time that my brother was getting jailed or getting arrested, it was like he didn't pay his ticket, he read a red light, he was not wearing his seatbelt, never a criminal thing. But he always was treated right. He never ever experienced police brutality. He tells me those police were so nice to me. As a matter of fact, he tells me there's this one time that they were transferring him from New Jersey to Pennsylvania because he had a ticket there. I think he had tickets like all over. And he told them that his handcuffs were so tight, they actually removed the handcuffs and actually gave him a cigarette. 2 police officers who were transporting him. So when I started hearing of this police brutality, I was like, is it like really against just the black people, like the African Americans, or is it like every other Africans? But everybody who I talked to from Africa had never experienced that kind of brutality, even though we got pulled over. And I know that people say, yes, he pulled me over, asked me where I was coming from, where I was going. To me, I think that they're just doing their job. And as long as he doesn't call me the N-word, as long as he doesn't treat me wrong, I just think that I decide the outcome of my situation with the police officers. And so many times I was never even given a ticket. But I think that my first impression of coming to America was not a good one. I was terrified. Like, my first impression of the black people that I met was terrifying. It was scary. It was something that I didn't want to be. And I got so scared that if I went and applied for a job, I was like, my name is Caroline, and I'm from Africa, like Kenya. I'm not African American, I'm from Kenya. And I'll be so proudly talking about it. I mean, of course you could tell because of my accent. Until years later that I started meeting like really educated black people who worked hard for their money, and they had big jobs, they owned their homes, I was like, wow. I almost, like, every time, seriously, and I'm telling you the truth, that I saw a black person like sitting in an office or doing something great or something, I felt like really giving them a hug or clapping for them. I would just be like, yes, that's nice. Oh, so tell me about yourself. You know, it became like a discovery. And again, I am not saying the brutality is not there. I'm not saying that there's no racial discrimination. Maybe it's there. I just have not experienced it. And there are times maybe when I apply for a job or I didn't get it, or I try to do something and people would tell me, oh, you know, the reason they didn't give you is because you're black. And I'd be like, really? Well, they didn't tell me that. Well, that's what it is. They're not going to tell you. And I'd be like, okay. You know, like, I'd be like, well, it's their loss, not mine. And I remember, like, when we moved into the area where we live right now, it's predominantly white, and there's a restaurant, like, right, we can walk to the restaurant from the house. And when we walked there the one time, I went with my mom, and it was predominantly white. I never ever really think about my color. Like, seriously, sometimes I forget what color I am. I don't ever think of my color. So we go into this restaurant, and everybody's looking, right? And, you know, they're looking at us, and we go, it's kind of quiet, you know, they serve us, we eat whatever we're eating, and we kept going back there. And the more we kept going back there, the more people socialized with us. So I started bringing my whole family there. I brought my sisters and my brothers, and they were like, oh, these people are kind of looking at us. I said, listen, can you imagine if we were in the village in Africa and we saw a white person just come into a local restaurant? Wouldn't we look? And we're not looking because we're racist. We're just looking because we're like, wow, what is this white person doing here? So same thing with them. They had never really seen a black person here. And so for them, it was like a kind of curiosity, but it's like we became such great friends. Whenever I go, there's like a standing ovation. It's like, wow, hey, Caroline, tell us, you know, because I think, and I asked so many of them, they were like, we've never really had a black person here. We've never really had a friend. And I think some of these white people, it's not that they're racist, but they've never really had like an encounter with a black person where they've sat with a black person and had a decent conversation, other maybe than what we see on TV. Maybe the experience with the black people is the experience that I had when I came here. Maybe the experience of what a black person is what they see on the show, like Cops, you know, or Bad Boys or whatever, you know, and that's the impression that I had when I came here. And a lot of people could be having that impression. I remember when I competed as Mrs. Kenya and the Mrs. World, And a lot of people would say, oh, does it feel like to be the only black person there? Because we had contestants like from South Africa or wherever they were white. And I say, I don't even realize that I'm black. Like, my color has never been an issue. I just walk into a room and I walk into a room, and if people think that I'm black or whatever, and I think that I'm beautiful. I think that I'm chocolate, and I've seen a lot of people want to tan. I saw some of the girls using a lot of money wanting to tan and be like my color. I saw a lot of girls trying to plump up their lips, to have bigger lips like us. I saw a lot of girls really trying to just be like me. So I was like, I don't know what you mean about this. I think they're trying to be like us, and so that was like my first impression. Am I saying that just the other day I didn't see police brutality and a black guy murdered? I saw that. But when I hear about Black Lives Matter, my main concern as the founder of the Voice of Our Child, which is an organization that really cares for the welfare of children, is how many innocent children are being killed by drive-by shooting. I don't see any demonstration of Black Lives Matter. That child's life matters. That kid's life was taken away. And I always told my friends, the black friends that I have, I always tell them, come on guys, like, what you guys should really be marching for is to remove these gangs in the neighborhood so that your innocent 3-year-old, 2-year-old children are not killed in the playground. So that when your kid is having a meal, dinner time, a bullet doesn't come through the door or the window, wherever, or the wall, and kill this child. I know he has this police brutality, and that's what you're marching for, that when they arrest you, it's like a nasty situation. I think that sometimes 50% or 90% of it has to depend with my reaction. And I'm not saying that I've not seen some cases where I've been like, that is wrong. That is so wrong. That should not have happened. Is it the impression? Do these people have the same impression that I had, that that you guys were scary, that you were loud and everybody owned a gun and things like that? If I felt like that as a black person, I wonder what some white people think. I think that we bridge the gap when we demonstrate and we burn buildings. I think we're showing the children who are coming after us a bad example when we can march peacefully. There's an organization that I like attending, and they do, it's called Current Events every Friday. It's predominantly Republican white people. And I always told them, I said, listen, why can't you as a government fund the schools in the black neighborhood so that this kid who's in this black neighborhood gets an equal opportunity in class the same as the white neighborhoods? I mean, I know in Africa there's kids who don't, we go to school without even a roof and become doctors and everything, but that's Africa. Here, I guess maybe it's different, I don't know. But we were so used to like learning in the village and truly becoming great people, and there's very rich people, white people who go to all white schools, but we went to school in the villages, and the best doctors and the best scientists come from there. But still, I was really watching for the black people here, and I said, can't you give them that? And then not only that, why can't you give the black community or people who cannot afford like college for their kids? I would want to get college for my kid, even though I work. I think it's a lot of money. I have just a daughter who finished college. I have another daughter who went to college. I have a son who's going to go to college next year, and another daughter who's going to go to college in 3 years. And it's very, very expensive. I struggle sometimes. I had to get a second job to be able to pay for their college. So I asked them, I said, why can't you give these kids that you're shooting in the streets maybe free college? Because if they got free college, they would be able to be educated and get a job. I said, maybe these kids are running the streets because an idle mind is the devil's workshop. They finish their GED and they feel so helpless because their parents cannot afford maybe to pay for their college, because maybe they were on welfare, and then their uncle and their father and everybody was on welfare. Maybe they grew up without a father, he was in jail. Maybe you could give them free college. And I tell my friends all the time, those are the things that we should be marching for. If you guys march for those, I'll be joining you in the streets. Marching to get equal education for the young kids in schools, marching to get the guns and the gangs out of the street, and marching to get free college for your kids so they could be there. I just realized being a police officer, you only need a GED. So maybe some of these boys who are getting arrested in the streets, they could, if you can only make it up to high school, Like, be in the police force, become black police officers, and then show them maybe how it's done. And again, I know that there was slavery, and I know it was really bad. I don't even like reading about those books. It breaks my heart. I can tell it was really bad too for us in Africa. And a lot of people lost their lives. And a lot of people were beaten. I remember my dad tells me a story. My dad is now 76 years old. He tells me of a story when he was a young teenager, and he tried to go into the city with his friends. The city was like maybe an hour walk or 2 hours for them to sell flowers. And he got so beaten on his butt by the white people, he couldn't sit down for like almost a month. And those days, boys didn't even wear shorts. You just wore a long shirt and no underwear or anything. And he was beaten so hard just by going to the city, because you had to have a permit to go into the city. A city where my grandfather had a shop before the white people came. But all those stories don't make me angry. Yes, I can get angry and say, yes, that should not have happened. But that just drives me more to go and work so hard and get my own job and prove to the white person who had colonized us that we have the brains and we have the know-how. And I'm telling you, in Kenya, we live so harmoniously with these people. There is no bitterness. For us, immigrants who come into this country, we come because we know that it's a land of opportunities. If we knew that there was discrimination against every black person who came here, we would not come here. And I know that I've gone to places where people have said, oh, like my husband, my first husband was a black man, and then I got married to my husband now, who's a white man. I don't even like referring to, but I'm just saying that for the sake of this video. But one time he went and looked at an apartment. They told him, oh, it was available. Then when he went there with me, they said it was not available. And he was like, oh, why didn't they give it to us? Do you think it's because you're black? I said, I don't know. But you know what? I always tell my husband, sometimes I don't blame these white people. Can you imagine my first impression of the black people that I knew? But now I understand them. But this white person who has lived here, maybe he has never had any form of interaction with a black person other than what they see on TV. This person has never had a friend who was black, who they sat together and they realized this guy didn't shoot me. We had a decent dinner together. He didn't steal stuff from my house. He didn't burn my house. You know, we had a picnic together and it ended up well. Nobody got shot. There was no loud whatever. You know, most white people don't have that chance. And the only way we can give them that opportunity is by educating our children and making them realize that there's equal opportunity. I tell my son all the time. The other day we were walking the dog. I said, Alex, I'm never worried about you when you take my car and drive out there, because I know who you are and I know how I have brought you up. I have brought you up to be a respectable person, to respect authority, whether it's a police officer, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a grocery store person. Respect authority and always be polite and work so hard, and sky's the limit, and never let anybody ever tell you that, oh, because you're black, you're going to be discriminated against. You can become the president of the United States. We had a black president. Like, seriously, we had a black president. If that didn't change the whole life of the black people, I don't know then what will. But maybe, again, probably because we come from a foreign country, we're just excited. We think it's fun. We just really like how it is. Maybe our attitude is different. Maybe there's discrimination and we don't even see it. I work for Mrs. America and the Mrs. World. I am their contestant coordinator. I'm a black contestant coordinator. And I hate to even say that, but I'm just saying that for the sake of this video. The guy who owns the organization is a Jew. And he'd always tell me about growing up with all these black kids from his neighborhood and how he went to so many places and saw no Jews and no the N-word. You know, and he says about the struggle that they faced. And I read about the Jewish and the German history, and it's heartbreaking. But yet, there's all these black contestants who come and compete in the system, and some of them complain that they didn't win because they were black. I have been a judge for so many different pageants and have never had the honor of that system come and tell us, do not choose a person of color.